someone got the courage to ask Babaji a question, and it had to do with drinking, actually. The Germans asked about, Babaji, what about alcohol? And Babaji said, for the first time, he said, alcohol is forbidden in our method. And the Germans got up in arms. Oh, but Babaji, we drink beer for breakfast. Went through the drinking, partying phase, which lasted many years. And by the time I was 18, I was really in a place where I was down and out, desperate. And I found out about a woman named Grace who was teaching a type of meditation. And I thought, oh, all right, I'll check it out. So I called her and went to visit her. And she introduced me to what we now know as Heartfulness.
Wow.
And she was the first, I think she was the first preceptor or trainer in North America. And her and her daughter had spent a lot of time with one of the masters of Heartfulness, Babuji, in India. They would stay with him. And so this is how I got into what I'm doing now. And we had our first 3 meditations, of which I didn't feel anything except a lot of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go back for a year after that. But she had given me a couple little books, Reality at Dawn and something else. And I kept looking at the pictures in the front of, there's Babaji in meditation pose and his master, Lalaji. And, it was the pictures that were very compelling to me to see those. And eventually, about a year later, I did go back and have a sitting with her where I did have a very profound spiritual experience. I just stood up after the sitting and I felt weightless, and I was outside my body. I didn't know how I was even walking. And I relayed that to her, and she sort of chuckled and said something about transmission. And and that convinced me that, oh, there's something to this. And that's how I got started.
Wow.
So since I was, that was 1974. So I've been doing it all this time. It's almost 50 years now.
So coming to Babuji, when did Grace introduce you to Babuji? He's the guide. You saw the pictures, of course, in the books. But
Right.
what was your reaction? Because
That first meeting with him was, wow.
what was that like? Where did you meet him?
So he was staying at someone's home. And, to really tell the tale, which I should do, we were still kind of like pirates, we were still partying and, doing all kinds of stuff we shouldn't be doing. And so when we got to Munich, maybe 5 days early, 3, 4, 5 days early, and we were down at the Hofbrauhaus drinking the dark beers, and we were just out, in Germany, they serve beer at McDonald's. Everybody drinks beer for breakfast. It's everywhere.
Sure.
So we weren't good abhyasis, And so finally he arrived, and
You were very happy, Abhyasis.
well, that's one word we could use. But he arrived, and that one morning we walked to the house where he was staying, and someone said, go around into the backyard. And we went to the backyard, and there were some glass doors looking into a room, and there was a room full of people. And someone motioned like this for us to, come in. So I opened the door, I stepped into the room, and immediately to my right next to me, was Babaji. And he looked up at me like this, and his face was like this far from me. And his eyes were startling. They were like mirrors. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I was so taken aback. Oh my gosh, this is Babuji. I couldn't even greet him. I couldn't even say anything. I was speechless. So we made our way into the room and sat in the back. And I sat with my back up against the wall. And Babaji hadn't said a word. He just sat there radiating this beautiful, divine essence. And he would just look around the room at people. And I'm sitting there looking at him, and all of a sudden he just looks over at me like this. And Rudy, in seconds, I feel all of the chakras, one after the other, were touched or affected, or something happened. And
Wow.
I knew he had seen my soul from the beginning and everything after that in my life had been changed. I just knew it. And that was my first exposure to Babaji. And then finally, someone got the courage to ask Babaji a question. And it had to do with drinking, actually. The Germans asked about, Babaji, what about alcohol? And Babaji said, for the first time, he said, alcohol is forbidden in our method. And the Germans got up in arms. Oh, but Babaji, we drink beer for breakfast, and it's part of our culture. And Babaji then said, culture has nothing to do with Sahaj Mark. And those were the first words I heard him say. And I felt so ashamed, of our drunkenness a few days beforehand. And I thought, oh my gosh, I felt really bad.
It must be very difficult to handle his passing, 1983.
Oh.
How did you handle that?
Oh. I remember, I was out with friends drinking, and the next morning I got up, feeling terrible, and the phone rings. And it's one of the Abhyasis telling me Babaji passed away. And I was just absolutely, I was in shock, actually. And shamefully again, my first thought was, oh my gosh, have I lost you? Have I lost you, Babaji? And so I immediately went to my sofa and I sat down and closed my eyes to see if the connection was still there. And very quickly, I felt Babaji's presence, just as I always had. And just such tears of gratitude, came, and I just was, so thankful that in spite of myself, that I knew Babaji wouldn't give up on me.